The Atlanta Braves made some news this week, and we are back for another edition of BPTV to talk about a couple of returns. One we saw coming, the other, maybe not so much. We'll also get into that fifth starter battle and play some over-under. Grant McCauley and Chris Willis with you once again. We got plenty to get to today. As if you're a Braves fan, it's been a very, very busy news day. And if you're one of us, like Chris and I, you've had a lot to tweet about, a lot to post about, a lot to write about, and we got a lot to talk about on the show. Before we get started with all that, though, make sure you hit subscribe to the channel. Leave us a like on this video and turn on those notifications so you get an alert every time we drop a new episode. Chris, I don't want to waste any more time, and let's get to the news of the day because the Atlanta Braves certainly had some things going on in the outfield with not one, but two returns on Thursday and two very different types of returns as well. We'll start with the one we knew about. That's Ronald Acuña Jr. returning to the Braves lineup where he was the DH and leadoff hitter for Atlanta on Thursday. 0 for 2 in his first action back, couple of strikeouts. Acuña's first game action since February the 29th after he tweaked his right knee during that rundown in a spring training game. That's not a sentence I wanted to be talking about at all this spring, but nonetheless, that's what we've kind of had to deal with the last couple of weeks. But fortunately, he is back in the lineup after getting cleared. He got his knee checked out in Los Angeles. Acuña's been taking part in baseball activities, hitting on the backfields, batting practice, playing catch, all those things. Just no games yet until today. And now Acuña has 2 weeks to get himself ready for opening day. That is something that I don't believe I'm alone in saying gives everybody an opportunity to breathe a nice big sigh of relief.
Yeah, no doubt. You can exhale now because he's back on the field. Like I said, it sounded like he'd been doing everything off the field that they wanted him to do. He pronounced himself ready to play. Obviously, they're going to be cautious with him, and that's certainly the right move. But yeah, it was good to see him back out there, and I'm guessing probably a day off tomorrow, and then maybe another start at DH, and it shouldn't be long till we see him in right field again.
Yeah, I think that Ronald has adequate time to get himself back out there and going. And as I talked about in a few different places, this one included, I felt like if this was a regular season, he might have missed a couple of days. They would have gotten him checked out, done all the imaging, everything they basically did, and have him back out there because he did feel like he was ready to play. And if you watch Behind the Braves this week, Ronald Acuna Jr. had a lot of things to say about how he views 2024 and an opportunity to have quite an encore. But he needs to be healthy to do that, and the Braves certainly want to see it. Now let's get to something a little bit unfamiliar, unexpected, I guess, but familiar, I should say. Let me correct that. The Braves announced that they have signed outfielder Adam Duvall to a 1-year, $3 million contract, putting an end to any speculation about who Atlanta's fourth outfielder is going to be by bringing back this familiar face. Duvall is 35 years old. He spent last year with the Boston Red Sox, though a wrist injury early on definitely affected his season. He finished batting .247 with 21 homers and 58 runs knocked in 92 games. This will be Duvall's third stint with the Braves. Of course, he was traded over initially in 2018, stayed through 2020, then returned in another trade during the magical 2021 season, and left as a free agent after 2022. And now he's back in 2024. So, Chris, what's old is new again. And this is what I would call a surprisingly unsurprising name based on based on name value alone. It just seems like the kind of move that the Braves would make based on how they've operated the past few years and how familiar they are with what Duvall brings.
Yeah, definitely surprising. My thinking on it was that they weren't going to be able to get an established guy for one of those bench roles because they didn't have a role to really supply anybody. And most veterans are looking for an opportunity at least. And, I think another part of the surprise today was the Braves, Mark Bowman reported that, Duvall's going to platoon with Jarred Kelenic, which goes against what they said initially, when they were going to give Kelenic the everyday job. So, Kellenic's had a little bit of a slow spring. You and I talked about him last week. We're not too worried about him. But I think this is another way that they could take some of the pressure off of him if there is any, and the fact is, Duvall makes this team better. They're a whole lot better today than they were yesterday. He provides insurance at all three outfield spots. He could play there. He could DH. So, it's a no-brainer signing, and an experienced guy who's got some history here and is well liked in the clubhouse.
Yeah, all those things, all those boxes are things that Duvall checks. Now, what the signing means for Jarred Kelenic has been the question that everybody's been asking about this move. You mentioned Mark Bowman reported that they are planning to platoon Kelenic and Duvall. Now, what does that mean as far as Kelnic's playing time? Well, he's the lefty in this platoon if it goes the way that most people imagine it will, which means that he's probably going to get the bulk of the starts because there are far more right-handed starters than lefties. And it makes a lot of sense. It is counter to what Alex Anthopoulos did say early in the spring about giving Kellick that opportunity against left-handed hitters, but he's still going to end up with the majority of that time. And you touched on it, and I think this is one of the most important aspects of this deal. To get a player like Duvall to come over to sign this deal, you've got to find some playing time for him. Alex Anthopoulos talked about this very thing early this spring, the challenge of getting good players to add to the bench when you have a team that doesn't really have very many moving pieces, which means not very many opportunities for you to get yourself off the bench. You're just going to end up sitting an awful lot. And the bottom line is Duvall brings a power bat, a good glove, and does provide insurance should the Braves need that in the outfield or designated hitter. And as we've seen in with health over the past few years, you can have the best laid plans in spring training. Everything can change at some point over the course of the season, and usually several times.
Yeah, without a doubt. And I think, the important thing to keep in mind here is, yes, the Braves did say they planned on playing Jarred Kelenic every day, but we also know that they're always looking to make the roster better. I think Adam Duvall probably entered this offseason thinking he was going to get a little more than a 1-year, $3 million deal. Perhaps he was going to get a starting role somewhere else, and it hasn't materialized. So this was an opportunity to bring him in, give him a role, make the team better, make the bench better. So, and I think that's the biggest thing that goes into this. It was just an opportunity that they had to make the roster better, and they took it. And this is how things are going to go from here to opening day.
Yeah, and the plans on February 14th, those are subject to change. Any plan that you make over the course of the season is subject to change based on the availability of somebody that's out there, maybe a move you didn't expect to make, a player you didn't think was available. And I think that's a little bit of what went on here. And I can tell you this as well, to circle back to another thing you said, and this is not a move that was made because the Braves were worried about Jarred Kelenic's spring numbers and decided to go out and do something about it, make a rash decision, and cut his playing time. It's a smart signing that makes the team better. And it's kind of what we were talking about for weeks here. Is the fourth outfielder in camp for the Braves, or will Atlanta go out and make a move? And now we have our answer because they brought somebody else in.
Yeah, without a doubt. And I mean, you have to feel a little bad for, a guy like Jordan Luplow and Eli White who have played well. But, this was the scenario that you and I have talked about since the spring started. The Braves had some flexibility, that 40-man roster. There was always a chance they were going to add some more faces to the mix. And I mean, we've still got 2 weeks to go. I wouldn't be shocked at all if they elected to bring somebody else in, whether it's another bullpen guy or another bench guy, if the opportunity presents itself. I mean, that's the big takeaway from this is, and they've said it plenty of times, Alex Anthopoulos is always looking for ways to make the roster better. And he's proven, during his time in Atlanta that if he gets that opportunity, he will take it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that this is just one of those signings that was geared towards making the club better. It's not an overreaction to what somebody did or did not do over the first few weeks of Grapefruit League play. The Braves invested a lot of time, effort, and energy in getting Jarred Kelenic, and they still very much believe in the possibilities and the potential that he has. He's got to go out there and put it into results. And, whether or not he gets to play every day or play 3 out of every 4 games, I don't think it's going to take away from how big and how good of an opportunity this is for Jarred Kelenic and the Braves if he is able to turn that potential into results. In other spring training news for Atlanta, we've had our eyes on this 5th starter battle for a while, really since camp opened. There were a couple of developments on that front in a few different ways. Reynaldo Lopez struggled a bit, but turned in a decent outing in his 4th spring training appearance, his 2nd start. Bryce Elder, though, he got lit up with a big first inning against Baltimore, but then settled down. I think Chris Lean has been towards Lopez since they announced that he's getting a chance to start again after spending the last 3 years in the bullpen. It's not all about spring numbers. I can't say that enough, but Atlanta has to have a solid plan for a $30 million acquisition, right?
Yeah, I think so. And as we talked about before, if you're going to stretch him out, you're going to do this experiment. It makes a whole lot more sense to do it at the start of the season because you've got spring training to stretch him out. It's a whole lot more difficult to put him in the bullpen and then try to stretch him out, at midseason or during the regular season. So, I don't want to read too much into spring numbers. You never know what guys are working on, trying to carry into those starts. But I mean, I've been impressed with Lopez. I think it's it's one of those things we got to see how much his stuff is affected by starting and going multiple innings.
Mm-hmm.
And then, Elder's had some tough innings in the spring, but at the same time, he has also shown some resiliency and, been able to keep himself in the game. So, I feel pretty good about the depth. Even if it starts with Lopez in the rotation, he'll have the opportunity, obviously, to pitch himself and stay there. But at the same time, I think there's a good chance we're going to see a lot of this depth before the season is over.
Yeah, I want to touch on that in just a moment. And I almost feel like 2023 kind of cuts both ways for Bryce Elder because, yeah, everybody remembers how it ended because that was the most recent sample size that we had. But he also showed a lot over the first, 3 months of the season when they very much needed him to do that. So it's kind of, I don't want to call it a mixed bag because I think that would totally take, all of the accomplishment that he had in his All Star campaign away. But also, competition is good. And I think the Braves believe in that. And we talked about going out and signing an Adam Duvall at this point in spring training. What does that do? It makes the club better. Competition is also geared towards doing that, but having that depth and having those options, awfully important. It does, though, raise some questions about Elder and the best role for him. Does he become a long man in the bullpen? Does he go to Gwinnett and start? I would think the latter would probably be the case, but who knows exactly? Either way, that's a weird trajectory for a guy who was the Stripers' opening day starter a year ago and could be lined up for that very same job after making the National League All-Star team in what was a pretty improbable run in 2023.
Yeah, I mean, and I think it just speaks to things when you got a guy like Elder that made the All Star team last year, logged over 170 innings, and there's a chance he comes back into this season, doesn't even make the club.
Wow.
I think in
Yeah.
that scenario, you got to look at it like they've improved this rotation, for him to get bumped off. I know it ended badly, but I guarantee you that when they went into the 2023 season, they had no intentions of Bryce Elder throwing 170 plus innings. That was the situation he kind of got thrust into. So, I'm still confident in Elder, but at this point, I think it's Lopez's job to lose. But I'm also sure that we'll see Elder again at some point.
Yeah, I mean, that depth is going to come into it. And let's talk a little bit about that because additionally, AJ Smith-Shawver was reassigned to minor league camp this week. Same was true for Hurston Waldrep a little bit before that. Those are a couple of names that everybody's going to have in mind for future opportunities. With the Braves using 16 starters last year, 13 of those real starting pitchers, 3 of those openers, you just have a feeling that some of these names are going to be called a time or two, maybe more than that, before 2024 is done.
Yeah, without a doubt, and I think Smith-Shawver is actually going to start again tomorrow, because even though he was sent out to Gwinnett, but I think the best case scenario is you want to see guys like Smith-Shawver, Waldrep go down there and pitch their way into the picture.
Yeah.
It's a much different situation if the Braves have to go down there and get them, and I think that was kind of the situation Smith-Shawver found himself in last year. Might not have been completely ready. But the Braves needed him, and he stepped up, and it showed some signs. But
Mhm.
if he could go to Gwinnett and pitch his way into the picture, then that depth that we were just talking about, I mean, just gets that much stronger.
Yeah, and when you're a major league starting pitcher at the age of 20, you have definitely been put on a fast track, and AJ Smith-Shawver was a year ago. There's more quality depth behind those guys, behind Waldrep and behind Smith-Shawver. You got Darius Vines, Alan Winans, Huascar Noah, and Ian Anderson are both working their way back from Tommy John. Eventually, they could be in this picture, and as we've learned, you're going to need all this depth to get through a long season. Now, I want to close out this episode by playing a little more over-under, and we're going to focus on the Braves infield for this one. And again, let me put my disclaimer on it. These are my numbers purely for entertainment purposes. Chris, I'm going to start at first base with Matt Olson, who set a Braves record and led all of Major League Baseball with 54 home runs a year ago. I set the over-under at 43 and a half home runs for Matt Olson this year. What are you taking?
I'm going over. I think I'm not going to predict a guy to hit 40, to hit 50 as I did last week, but I think Matt Olson can hit 45, easy, and he still be 9 homers off the pace from last year. So yeah, I'll go over with that one.
Yeah, I would not be shocked by that either. I'm also going to take the over. Calling for 50 or more that's a tall order, and there's not a whole lot of guys in the history of baseball that hit 50 home runs in back-to-back years. But somehow, some way, I feel like Olson, when it comes to the great sluggers in Major League Baseball, doesn't really get his due, and that's after the 54 homers and leading the entire league a year ago. It's just one of those things that his name may not be as big as some of the others on that list, but since he hit his first home run in 2018, no one has hit more home runs since midseason of 2018 than Matt Olson has. That's a little nugget to store away. Over at second base, Ozzie Albies, I set the over-under at 29 and a half home runs for him. I think I know which way we're both leaning there.
Yeah, I'm going over. I mean, if he's healthy, I think that's the only thing. I mean, he's shown that he's got that 30 homer pop, and in this lineup, he's going to get plenty of opportunities to hit. So, it's still amazing that you was talking about Olson kind of being underrated. It's still amazing that Ozzie Albies is as underrated as he is.
Yeah, super weird when they did that top 10 and Ozzie did not appear among the top 10 second basemen in MLB. And then they do the top 100 players and what was it, 4 or more of the second baseman ranked in front of him didn't show up on the top 100 players, but Ozzie Albies did. That's some weird math. I'm also going to take the over. He's proven he can hit the 30 home runs, and if he's healthy, I think Ozzie does it again. Orlando Arcia, I'm going to go a little bit more old school with this one. Over under 69.5 runs batted in.
I'll go under. Orlando had a great season last year. Kind of cooled off at the end. He ended up about league average. There's so many guys in this lineup to drive in runs. So I think he might get lost in the shuffle. He may hit ninth all season too. Mm-hmm. So I'll go under on this one, but I still think he's capable of having a good season at the plate.
Maybe I'm going to be the overly optimistic one in this particular deal, but you look at this Braves lineup, there's going to be a lot of runs batted in opportunities or run scoring opportunities no matter where you hit. And even batting 8th or 9th over the course of the season, I still think Orlando Arcia could drive in a bunch of runs down there. And that was a bunch over 100. Well, of course not. That'd be pretty wild if you're batting 8th or 9th, driving in 100 runs. With this Braves lineup, though, I'm not going to take it completely off the table, but it is somewhat unlikely. I'll go over 69.5 runs batted in for Orlando Arcia. Let's wrap it up with Austin Riley. He has hit 30 home runs for 3 consecutive years. He is one of 3 Braves third basemen to ever do that. Chipper Jones, Eddie Matthews, the other. But I'm going to set the bar a little bit higher. Over under 39.5 home runs for Austin Riley this year. So, Chris, I guess what I'm asking you is, do you think this is the year Austin Riley hits 40 or more?
Man, that's a great question. And I'm sitting here thinking, I just predicted Matt Olson to hit 45. Can I really predict another hitter to, put that kind of season together on in addition to Ronald Acuna Jr.? I think Austin Riley's going to have, I don't want to say a bounce back season because he was great last year. He just got overshadowed by, a couple of his teammates. I'm still going to go under. I think he's a solid 35, 38 homer guy. He may flirt with that 40. I'll go under just for the sake of going under. But it would not shock me at all if he hit 40 homers.
I'm going to take the over. And there was something about that month and a half in 2022 leading up to when he got that great big contract extension that I just started to get this feeling one of these years, Austin Riley is going to lead the National League in home runs. I think it could be 2024. I'm going to take the over. It's going to be a career high in home runs for him, but is he going to be able to hit more homers than Matt Olson, more than Ronald Acuna Jr., and more than everybody else in the National League? That remains to be seen, but I just feel like that year's out there for Austin Riley, and 2024 is going to be it. And as we know, this infield is a huge part of this powerful lineup. I don't think there's another group of infielders in baseball that has this kind of power around the horn. If there is, Chris, I haven't seen them. I haven't identified them. Maybe you can let me know if you've seen them.
No, I haven't seen them either. And it would be crazy to see another situation where they have 3 guys hit 40 homers, and they've definitely got the opportunity with Acuna, Olson, and Riley. So, they got close in 2019. So it'll be interesting to see if they can chase that mark.
Well, they hit more home runs than any team in baseball a year ago. They tied the single season record. Is that in store for 2024? Something like that or more? We're all going to find out together. That brings us to the end of this edition of BPTV. Make sure you hit that subscribe button right here on the Battery Power channel on YouTube. Turn on those notifications. You'll get an alert every time we drop a new episode. Thank you again for riding along with us, and we look forward to catching you next time. Until then, so long, Braves Country.